My name is Sarah Daly, and I will introduce myself and then my colleagues will introduce herself. I'm the Managing Director for Recruitment, Cultivation, and Diversity Programs in Boston Public Schools Office of Equity. It's a fairly long title, and it actually reflects a lot of the work we're doing in Boston. So we have combined our recruitment efforts, our development and cultivation efforts for our new teachers, and any programming that we do that is specifically focused on affinity groups. The third component in that conglomeration is also we have a fairly robust pipeline development work that we're doing to develop our teachers. We'll hear a little bit more about it as we go through the
Hi, my name is Becky Schuster, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Equity for the Boston Public Schools. I've been in that role for the last 2.5 years. My professional life has been entirely in the field of civil rights and diversity, but this is the first time I'm working in a school district over the last few years. My primary educational credential coming in was the fact that I'm a parent. I'm a Boston Public School student and have been for a long time. Bringing my background in terms of civil rights and diversity into this particular setting, working very closely with Sarah, and also we have an Office of the Opportunity and Achievement Gap that we'll tell you a little bit about. So I would say that Colin Rose, who's the head of that office, Sarah and I work very closely together at many different levels of the district, and we're going to share some of that information with you today.
So I want to talk a little about our objectives today. So we're going with intrusive concepts, and it's in particular focusing on our racial equity work and our racial equity tool. We're going to talk about how that tool is being applied across our offices, both the Office of Equity, Human Capital, and the Opportunity and Achievement Gap. And then I'll share a lot of examples of the work that we're doing to hire and retain Black and Latinx educators. Becky, why don't I swap it? You can do it. Okay.
Okay, so the work that we're doing takes place in this broad context around best practices for racial equity. And the next few slides are pulled from training that we have done across the district in partnership with the Government Alliance for Race and Equity. And I gave you their logo slides there because they have tremendous resources on their website. The Government Alliance for Race and Equity is a national organization that any municipality can join. So the city of Boston is a member, and that gives us access to all kinds of tools and training. The Center for Social Inclusion is their consulting arm, and they recently merged with Race Forward. Some of you may be familiar with that organization that does a lot of great work around racial equity. And so this is sort of the foundation of our work, is this cycle, and it's not a linear cycle like when you start here and you end there and then you're done. It's a constant process. So first of all, normalizing work on racial equity, having as many people as possible in our school district or in any particular individual school share terminology around racism. What is it? How does it work? What's the difference between interpersonal racism, internalized racism, systemic racism, institutionalized racism? And having people just be comfortable with those words. Just having that be, like, we talk about this in our school. That's just how it is. Of course we talk about racism, right? So that's very important. And not only having those shared terminology, but having a shared sense of urgency and priority on the work. That it's not, well, first we care about instruction, and then we care about the budget, and then we care about our MCAS scores, which is the standardized test in Massachusetts. And then, 22nd on the list, we care about racial equity. No, we care about racial equity first, actually, as important as any other priority, because it is that important to our success as a district. Second is organizing. So what internal infrastructure do we need to ensure that racial equity stays front and center? So in our case, these 3 particular offices, the Office of Equity, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do in our office, the Office of the Opportunity and Achievement Gap, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them. and then Saren's office doing the work around hiring and retention. So, and there are others as well, but those are really at the center, having that internal infrastructure. So there's somebody whose job it is to say, wait, what about racial equity when we talk about this topic? We're talking about building a new school. What about racial equity when we pick which school to rebuild, right? Having those, that baked into the structure. Community partnerships, having those external voices, parents, civil rights advocates, community groups, figuring out how to get student groups, having them at the table as part of the conversation, particularly lifting up voices of color in the conversation. And then operationalizing racial equity. And we're going to talk about the racial equity tool that I passed out to you, how that works. So we are applying a lens of racial equity actively, inserting it into our decision making, and making sure that we're tracking data to see, is it working? Are we correcting historical disparities by the decisions that we're making? Let's see if okay, and so we're applying the racial equity tool to our decision making in both the process and the product. So, for example, if we're deciding where we're going to build a new school and which community is going to get that infusion of resource in that beautiful building, we want to think about who's at the table. Look around, who's at the table? Are the people who will be most affected by this decision at the table? Which in Boston, by definition, is almost always going to be people of color. And then we're looking at the product. How are we proceeding? Have we applied a racial equity lens to the work that we're doing? So we want to think about applying the racial equity tool at every time we're making an important decision. We may not need to be thinking about this every time we decide whether we need more number 2 pencils in the supply closet, but we need to be thinking about it at many different levels of decision making in schools and in the district overall. And remembering that there are cumulative effects to making many small, what seem like small decisions over time can add up to opportunity gaps. So we want to be applying the racial equity lens even when it seems like a small decision. And when you don't do that, you're likely to end up with a status quo. It has to be an active decision. So the tool that I passed out to you has these sections, these 6 sections to it. What are we trying to achieve with this particular decision? What data have we looked at to assess where the opportunity gaps are currently for our students of color, our families of color, our employees of color? How are we going to engage the community to make sure that the right voices are at the table, that we have the people most affected potentially by this decision as part of the decision making? What active strategies can we use to ensure that the results of our decision is to eliminate disparities rather than maintain disparities, or worse yet, support existing disparities? How are we going to implement this? It can't just be all theory. How are we going to actually make sure this gets done? The more the decision is running against the status quo, the more focus has to be on implementation, because the inertia will set in, like, oh, we always did it like that, right? So making sure that there's a very clear timeline, who's responsible, how are we going to know if we're actually achieving our intended strategy, and then making sure that there's communication and accountability, that we're going to circle back and see, did it work? Did it get done the way we said it was going to get done? Did it have the effect we wanted it to have? If not, how are we going to treat it or throw it out and replace it? The structure of how we're doing this work, first of all, we have agreed upon as a district that we have 3 core values: equity, coherence, and innovation. So it's right there at the center of things. It's no longer just, I would say, the elephant in the room. It's a constant topic. The Office of Equity, where I work, has primarily an operational focus. So we're looking at, first of all, preventing and addressing bias-based incidents in schools. So we're doing the work of this school year up until now, we've received nearly 800 requests for assistance in my office with bias-based incidents, including allegations of sexual misconduct. Okay, so it's just like a daily fare in my office. Like, this student said this word to that student, what should we do? And we're trying to address those on a one-off basis, but also try to leave classroom and school climates better than we found them. And in addition, we're doing this work of bringing an equity lens to the work of the district and face it. And what I mean by operational focus is in almost every area except instruction is where my office is focused. So transportation equity, food equity, parent communication equity, equity in school assignment process, equity in access to the schools that are considered the highest quality in the district, those kinds of issues. Office of Human Capital, where Saren works, is focusing on hiring and retention, particularly of Black and Latino teachers, which we'll talk about that more in a minute. Office of Opportunity and Achievement Gap primarily focus on instruction, culturally and linguistically sustaining practices in the classroom. What are we doing so that our Black and Latinx students are graduating with the same readiness for college and career and life as their white and Asian counterparts? And we're using, all of us are using the racial equity tool. We're doing systematic training for people who are decision makers, especially, and we're trying to make sure it gets applied over and over and over again every time it should be. So as I said, we're responding to incidents, we're providing accommodations. We're focused primarily today on we're ensuring that every key decision is being considered through the lens of equity, particularly racial equity. And we also look at equity in terms of students with disabilities, special education. We look at equity in terms of English language learners, immigrant students. We look at GLBTQ students, gender nonconforming students, but our primary number one priority articulated is racial equity. And we do a whole lot of training. So an example of how the tool can work. So this is a very unfortunately realistic example where we may have a school that's racially integrated, but funny thing, the parent council meetings or the PTA, whatever you call it in your schools, everyone is showing up as white. What's going on? So the first step when we move from awareness to analysis to action, just simply saying it. Hey guys, did you notice everyone here today is white? Like, that's already a big step. Lots of people just don't mention it, right? We're going to ignore it, right? So we're mentioning it. Next, we might say, hey, how about if each person here, let's say we have 15 white parents for this parent council meeting, how about if we each ask one parent of color, notice you weren't there, anything particular in your way of coming that we could lend, that the parent council could lend support. We then look at our answers, we find out people say transportation is a problem, time off of work is a problem because of when the meeting is, and child care is an issue, and elder care because grandma needs help, and I can't leave grandma at home by herself. Then we strategize, how could we support you with this? We then advocate to get the resources we need to remove barriers, and then we take action. So maybe we fund child care in meetings. Maybe we set up a system where people can request a ride to a meeting. Maybe we vary the dates and times of meetings. Maybe we have a conference call number. So even if I'm home keeping an eye on grandma or holding my infant, I can also be part of the meeting. So this is an example of how we're trying to move people, start with some awareness of how racism is playing out and then move all the way to taking action. We've been applying the racial equity tool in all kinds of really interesting ways, some more expected than others. And I'll try to get very passionate about this, so I'll try to talk briefly, but we changed what student ID was needed to get into our exam school test. So Boston has 3 exam schools that are generally considered some of the best high schools in the city. And we were asking kids for things like a social security card to get into the test. Think about that for a minute. Okay, so we changed that. We had a free prep course for that test, and it was supposed to be primarily aimed at children who would generally have the biggest barriers to admission, and somehow over the years it became a nearly entirely white and Asian prep course. How did that happen? So we changed it. We added buses from different neighborhoods. We added free breakfast and lunch. We put in a whole new system of how we tell people about the program. When we closed the school recently, we made a decision, and this was a school that was 99% African American Afro-Caribbean students. We made a decision that every student would be placed in a school that was considered higher quality than the one they were in. instead of just saying, oh, well, we closed the school and now you're going there, and, moving kids from struggling school to struggling school. We finally started asking parents to identify their race when they answer climate surveys, so we can actually now see for each school, do the Black parents feel welcome there? Do the Latino parents feel welcome there? Do the Asian parents feel welcome there? Do the white parents feel welcome there? We can analyze some of that data much more specifically. We set in motion standards for when we translate communication to parents. We invented this thing we call the Opportunity Index, and you can find a lot of information about this on the Boston Public Schools website, where we're looking at what is in each child's backpack when they get to school. So what I mean by that is, what are the statistical factors that are beyond the school's control that are indicators of a lack of opportunity for students? By figuring out what those things are, and I'll give you an example in a minute, we can then assess which schools are serving the children with the highest concentration of need, and we can actually direct more resources to those schools. So, for example, if I live in a census tract, to give you a sense, Boston has 177 census tracts. So this is we're talking about like a 4-block radius, that kind of thing, 8-block radius. If I live in a census tract with a lot of people who have completed a BA or above, I have a better chance of graduating from high school in Boston than if I'm in a census tract with a small number of people who have a BA or above. That's the kind of factor that we're looking at, is what are the things that are not in the school's control that children come with to school every day as barriers, and then bring more resources to the school. So it's quite a radical concept. We just started piloting implementation of this in a small chunk of our budget this school year. And the last example, last year we had a one-time $13 million allocation of furniture, money for nice chairs and money for projectors and for smart boards and that kind of thing. And we asked each school leader to work with their community to say, where are the opportunity gaps in our school? If we're going to add this resource, this new furniture, this new smart board, this new whatever, how are we going to aim that resource towards the children who need it most? How are we going to engage our community in talking about what would make the biggest difference? How is the new resource going to advance equity, particularly racial equity? And then how are we going to find out if it worked or not? And many of our school leaders said, oh, we would have naturally done this anyway, so that we would have had this conversation. And the others said, this is the first time our parent council or our site council has ever sat down to talk about equity in this explicit way. I'll tell you more details, but that's interesting. All right, I think it's
Becky always says, I shouldn't be nervous. I'm by nature an introvert, so bear with me while I do this thing. I want to start by reading our problem of practice. Systemic racism forms a barrier to onboarding teachers of color at every phase of the process, from college enrollment to selection bias, and Pell passage. And it's our district's goal to mitigate that on all levels. So I want to talk a little about the work that we're doing. We've made a commitment to focus on teacher effectiveness and align teacher effectiveness with diversity. We focus on looking at, as I said, all of the areas that impact and develop our cohort and our teachers. Sorry. So we think about our work in two different levels: of cultivating our educators, of supporting them as they grow to become teachers. And also we focus on the fact that as a district, we made a pretty major investment in determining to do early hiring and mutual hiring. I don't know if is anyone aware of what mutual hiring is? Mutual hiring is a district's decision to have school leaders and school site councils make their hiring decisions. So the challenge there, as Becky mentioned, is that as a district, if we're giving the hiring onus to school leaders and their school site council that are made up of teachers, then we have a responsibility as an organization to support them and develop them so they can make racially equitable decisions at the school-based level. So one of the things we've learned is, one of the root causes for us as a district is that there is a very low number of educators coming both out of undergrad programs and graduate programs. In the state of Massachusetts, 1 out of 10 are educators of color coming out of graduate programs. This is a fairly complex chart, but why don't we start on the left side? What's noteworthy there is though Boston is reflecting that we have 38% of our educators are educators of color, we sit in a state where 7% of our educators are educators of color. And what that means, and what we need to be acutely aware of, is that we can easily sit on our laurels, but we recognize that as the Boston Public Schools, though we only hire 6% of the educators in the state, we hire 49% of the Black teachers. And we have 25% of the Latinx and also Asian teachers. And what that means for us as a district is that we know our educators have many choices, and at all points throughout the continuum of their career coming into BPS, growing within our system, and considering developing in our system, we have to be acutely aware of that. As a district, our Office of Human Capital frames our work on 3 levels. We cultivate and recruit, we hire and deploy, and develop and retain. And I think these 3 categories are really critical for us. We've leveraged and deepened our work in each of those categories. Normally you see recruit, which is pretty standard, but we have, because we know what the root cause is, we've actually created 2 programs to develop our own educators, one of which has been sanctioned by the state. BPS is the only district in the state of Massachusetts that are able to give out licensed ESL and special education educators, because we saw that great need. So you think you're too young to want to be a teacher. This work started a long time ago in Boston. We really fundamentally believe that the next generation of our teachers are in our classrooms right now. So we've done our work even cultivating our high school students. And I wanted to share with you a video they created for one of our programs, which is our high school teacher program. It was so perfect before.
No, I think it's good.
I'm the Associate Director for Guidance here at New Mission High School. This is year 5 for me. I've been doing this for 4 years. I'm a Boston kid. I say that to my students all the time, and I think that's why I'm able to connect with them so much.
I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. I went to high school here, college, grad school. That the only possible scenario was for me to stay in the city, and I don't ever see myself leaving.
The entire mission, in my opinion, behind the high school teacher program is to create a cycle of education.
It's gonna make sure that I'm gonna be successful, that I'm gonna be a teacher, and I'm gonna be able to give back to my community.
Before I started it, I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher, if I even wanted to work with kids for sure. And after starting the program and going on trips to see schools, it was a very amazing experience because I knew this was something I wanted to do.
Honestly, this is not a job for me. This is me coming in here to teach that there are times where I think that I'm committing robbery because of what I'm being paid to do, because I love working with students. I love seeing them grow as individuals and being able to demonstrate that I am like them, just older. I think brings the connection closer.
From when I was younger, everybody would be like, oh, I want to be a superstar or a singer. I would be like, I want to be a teacher. And everybody would laugh, but I'd be like, I don't care. One day I'm gonna educate your children.
Any student that gets involved, they build the personal skills, they build the social skills, the academic skills, and the knowledge to be informed citizens in a time where that needs to be the case.
I wish I had a high school teaching program. I wish I knew. You know, I didn't have it. I had to back my way in to become an educator. It was the best decision of my life. Not a day goes by that a graduate or a current student is texting me about a decision that I helped them make. Some kids, you know, they just need that, you know, that reassurance from someone that's genuine. And, they tend to find me, and I guess that's my load this year. But I'm not going anywhere. You know, I'm not running off to another career. I just want to help kids now.
I couldn't be more grateful to be doing what I'm doing with people who I see reflections of myself, of my family, my friends, and the fact that I'm able to bring that into the classroom and let these students know that the same parks that you play at, the same sports teams that you root for, I root for them too. I play in those same courts as well, that there's that sense of connection. And with my teaching, I always try to start from there, is build that relationship. And so the Boston side is just the cherry on top on that.
It feels pretty awesome to know that I'm gonna be a teacher here in Boston, a place that has given me so much, and helping children realize that they can be whatever they want to be. They can do what they want. Helping them achieve their goals is just gonna be amazing to me.
My relationships with my mentors are really good because I feel like even though they aren't physically here, we still, when we see each other or when they visit, we know that we have a relationship. And they've been great helping, just letting us know like what we don't know about teaching because or working with kids, because a lot of times when you ask someone like, oh, how's it being a teacher, they'll just tell you like there are days and it's not amazing all the time. So you're like, okay, what else? And they've definitely let us know like it's gonna be hard, but you're gonna love what you do. You're gonna love coming to work and seeing those kids that will come to you years later.
And a lot of kids, I'm their go-to person for various issues, academic and non-academic. And so it's a very multi-dimensional, multifaceted role. I very much see myself as an educator, although I'm not directly in the classroom.
This is a profession that might not carry the same esteem as lawyers and doctors and nurses, but I do think that it should, because that's how much of a difference you're making in the lives of your students.
I would encourage other students because a lot of times when I hear what people think of becoming a teacher, like, I don't want to become a teacher, or I don't want to be in the program because what if I don't want to be a teacher? And what they don't realize is there's so many different occupations within education. And you could be a guidance counselor, you could be an athletics advisor, like all this stuff with working with kids. So I would just let them know, I don't know what I'm going to be doing 10 years from now, but I know that if teaching is one of them, this is a program that you want to be in. This is a program that you definitely want to be connected to, because if you do become a teacher, they're going to be there with you every step of the way.
I am a future educator, and you can be one too.
So one of the things we learned is that we have to be really creative about how we recruit, who we recruit. I'll show you. And in so doing, this video we use when we recruit teachers, right? This video we recruit and use when we recruit students who want to become educators. Those teachers that are represented and guidance counselors are individuals that we use to go out and become our ambassadors all over the district as they think about and consider education. One of our commitments this year is that we refreshed and we're very intentional about our marketing materials. We have 7 official languages. All of our marketing materials are reflected in all 7 languages. All of the photos are actual teachers and students in our buildings. And so I'm sharing this with you to understand that this may seem macro and massive, but these are the resources that exist right in your spaces. I love having students see the teacher, on the poster. And these are given out and these are placed in all of our schools and in different neighborhoods. These ads are placed in local papers in addition to major papers. And we've also decided, how do we tap into our own teachers? Again, remember, people have choices, right? So if you're in the classroom the entire time, what are your other opportunities for leadership and growth? So we have recruitment fellows, individuals who want to do more and interested in talking about the profession and working in BPS, And they're our ambassadors when we go out and do recruitment events. They're the ones that people talk to you about why you want to work in Boston. A lot of the efforts we do are intentionally trying to give individuals access to our school leaders, to our teachers. As a recruitment team, we probably do a lot of organizing and letting our own teachers talk a lot about the experiences in Boston. We've been highly successful, I think, in drawing individuals of color to BPS at our events in particular. And part of the reason is that we've moved from strictly recruitment to cultivation. We've had events in Cambridge, in Chelsea, in Revere, and really small events to sort of introduce others to BPS, but more importantly for teachers in BPS to talk to other individuals who are considering education and have that type of dialogue. Very informal, intentional. I shared with you that we have 2 programs, our pipeline programs. I think this is probably our most exciting work, partly because it really draws on our own resources. Remember I shared with you earlier that we believe our next generation of teachers are in our classrooms, right? And so we have 85% of our students as students of color. They all are connected to families. We have a fairly diverse population of other educators in our building. So how do we develop individuals to become educators? We have 2 tracks. Our accelerated program focuses on individuals who want to continue to work, which is most of the case for many of us. And we're able to develop them on Saturdays over the course of a year. The other program is a much more intensive, and as I said, it gives initial license. The message here is, as a district, if we don't grow our own, we would never be able to get the diversity that we need because our community is changing so often and there's such a high need for both language different diversity and also racial and cultural diversity.
You can say something. So the aspect of our recruitment and retention work that the Office of Equity has been the most involved with is this piece, which we call our diversity-focused schools initiative. What we're doing, so we have about 125 schools in the Boston Public Schools, and each year, when it comes time for hiring season, which we are at peak right now, we identify about 20 of those schools that meet 2 criteria. The first is that there's a gap between who's attending the school and who's teaching in the school demographically. And second, that there's a critical mass of openings, that there's enough openings that if we put teachers of color into those seats, we're gonna move the needle at that school. So for example, if a school has 150 teachers and they have 1 opening, that's not a big opportunity for us. I mean, yes, we care about every single position, but the diversity-focused schools are schools where there's that gap between who's teaching and who's attending the school, and there's a critical mass of openings. So we're choosing roughly 20 schools a year, and we are requiring their school leaders to come to a training where we are telling them why they should care. Now, some of them already know, but some of them aren't totally bought into why it's important to be hiring Black and Latinx teachers in particular, and teachers of color more broadly. And so we're teaching them about what the data shows, which is that those teachers actually are the most effective for children. And so we're getting that buy-in, and then depending on the specifics, what their barriers are, we're offering them menu supports. So for example, one particular school that had 25 openings, the principal said, yeah, I care about this issue, but I just don't have time to read all those resumes. And so we've been giving her assistance with previewing resumes for her and saying, here are 10 people of color who are candidates who have the right credentials for this particular position, and that we stood out from the crowd. And then all she has to do is pick some of those interviews, right? So something that simple of just putting this in front of her made a huge difference.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
Once you screen for racial diversity, how do you then measure cultural proficiency once the candidates arrive?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so the work of the Office of the Opportunity and Achievement Gap sort of comes in at that point. So the work of their office has started at the school leader level and is beginning to sort of infiltrate more and more into the teacher level. And I don't know if you may want to add to this, Sarah, but we've put our principals through 21 hours on cultural and linguistic proficiency for teaching and instruction this year and 21 hours last year. And this is like hard hitting, like looking at the history of racism, not just in the United States, but globally, and how this directly impacts our kids, and how you need to understand the impact of racism in their daily lives, and how internalized racism plays out.
But at the interview, once
Ah,
the candidates are called out there, how
Yes.
will you screen for public
Do you want
officials?
to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is that there are multiple layers. One of our major goals is to make sure we have a very rich and robust pool. And then school leaders, we give them instructions around what are some really good questions that they can ask to yield a better understanding of a teacher's capacity in a building. So I think that because we give them a bank of questions and we ask that they do a good job of documenting their responses, then we have a good idea at least that these are areas that they ask in appropriate ways. Because that's the other side of asking inappropriate questions also is a lack of cultural proficiency. What's really powerful for us as a district is that school leaders are getting this information. The school site council, which is doing the hiring, has been given some really clear guidance. And in addition to recruitment, there's a whole effort around retention. So it's a both and. If you're recruiting, then you need to think about how you're developing and supporting this individual, because we as a district also are looking at your retention of educators of color, in addition to recruiting.
I assume that you're funding these folks as they go through their college experience.
The high school pipeline.
The high school pipeline, we have a partnership with City Year, and our partnership with City Year supports their graduate school. And we have a couple of university partners that are providing, it's not no cost, it's at least a very affordable cost for students to go to college.
Do you have any dropouts with candidates taking advantage of the program and not going?
Oh, I would imagine, yeah. We just started, our high school program we have one cohort that will be starting college this year. So I imagine, I've done this before when I was at BPS, we had a teacher pipeline program, and we ended up having a large number of students going into college, and then a substantial continuing and persisting into teaching, but the output was also college graduation. So though we didn't have everyone 100% going into teaching, we had a large number of students continuing on and graduating.
So you can see the results here, and it's impossible to sort of measure what all the factors are that are leading to these results. But since we in particular put the Diversity Focus Schools initiative in where we're concentrating our supports on key schools, we're seeing some really exciting numbers in terms of our success. And I can tell you that in looking at, we meet weekly this time of year to look at our numbers, and I'll show you what we look at. We have this incredible state-of-the-art dashboard where we're looking at, in this case, let's see, I guess this is, you're pulling up all of the teachers and guidance counselors in the Diversity Focus Schools for this year. And we're looking at how many applications did we have by race, how many of those fit the criteria for the positions that are diversity focused schools, how many interviews have we given to folks by race, and how many hires are we making. And we look at this not only as a group for all diversity focused schools every week, but we're looking at each individual diversity focused school. And then I'm on the phone saying, hey, I noticed that you have done 40% of your hires so far people of color, and you have 3 positions left to fill. What are we going to do to make sure those are also people of color, that kind of thing. And we're giving the schools the support they need. So this dashboard allows us to up-to-the-minute monitoring of whether our schools are succeeding at pushing that needle.
It just reflects the outcomes. One of the things that Becky didn't mention, and I think we often get criticized for this, so I want to make it clear that you hear asking, calling, communicating. It's not a punitive stance. It's a collaborative stance. It didn't work when you must, and we don't force place. So the conditions of really on our team making sure there's a robust pool to choose from, that's one. Being really intentional about supporting the school leader and understanding their role as an instructional leader in supporting racial equity in the building by doing 2 years of strong, focused professional development. Making sure the school site personnel committee is informed around their role. So now, if you push on all these levers, there are things that people can do, right? And then the choice becomes less about why not, and more about why shouldn't we do it? What's most important about these charts is the far left. This data set is the one that is most interesting to us. Because external hires is the one area, right, that we can increase our workforce diversity. But we were most excited about seeing that change from last year to 2016 to 2017. And the other thing is that it's a multi-tiered approach, right? So we're focusing on cultivating the racial, linguistic, and cultural diversity of our teachers. We're also paying attention to that for our school leaders. And so last year, again, we made a concerted effort, and we're really excited about cultivating some of our own to become school leaders and hiring from without. Yes.
You may be getting to this, but I'm curious to know the efficacy of the hiring of minority teachers or against the outcomes of the children, the academic outcomes.
Right. Are we
seeing
seeing any tracking there?
Are you tracking it at all with respect to that, or are you just kind of looking at the system itself and saying, certain schools are high performing, certain schools are low performing? Or are you specifically, because you seem to be very keyed in on finding where these people should go? I just want to do the same thing after the place to begin to disaggregate that again.
So your question is, are we looking, even though the research says that there's a correlation of higher
Correct.
academic achievement
Is
because we have a
Boston
racial. What I would say is that I know we're doing it, not my team, but as an office, the Opportunity Achievement Gap, that's their bit of work to determine how we increasing opportunity and reducing achievement gap. And so here's a great example. Outside this is I'll continue that point. I just want to make sure I explain this. What we're finding is that our school leaders and our school site council are making decisions to hire Black and Latino educators 2, 3 times more than our white educators. So this is again just evidence of our job. One of my team's job around recruitment is to make sure that we continue to bring into our district a really rich pool to select from, so that we can continue to stay, abreast of what their need is. I wanted to you asked about who's sort of the correlation between the academic achievement for students. One of the things the district has done is every department, we are included, has to make note in a very detailed SMART goals list of ways in which we are contributing to reducing the achievement gap for the city, for the district. And what you have is a matrix of different departments pushing on different levers to create an outcome that says more educators. We know that if you have a higher correlation of students of color working with teachers of color, there's likelihood that their achievement will increase, right? So our job and my team is to make sure we have this so that the curriculum team can then go in and look at the culture. So this is all intertwined. And this is another data set. The most important thing here is that you see on the right-hand side for us is that it's the external hires. And if we continue to do that, I think that's the place that we're most intrigued about seeing growth.
Question that one year ago, it said 50% increase in exercise Black educators.
Say what you said again, it's plus 5%.
Once you do the third bullet point, significant decrease in exits by, what are the factors?
The biggest anomaly, and we put that out there to note that next year it could be something whatever. This year we just noted that there were 50% decrease in it. That means it might be that this year people didn't retire, or and it's usually the departures are a lot of our departures for our Black teachers is retirement, and our challenge is that we're not replacing them with folks coming out of the profession at the same rate. But this is and we grantedly say this is an anomaly, and I don't know what next year will look like. But we'll champion it. This is gonna be our slide. Maybe we'll look, whatever. One of the things that we know is our standardized tests, and we spent this year. I have been puzzling around MTELs for a number of years, and we have folks in our building, in our schools, who have taken the MTELs, our standardized tests, 6, 7, 8 times. And some of them are doing it on the basic C's, communications and literacy, the first one, or the ESL, or the foundation. So we have paras in our buildings who are essentially co-teaching because they just can't pass the foundations of reading test, but they're gifted master's level, whatever. So I often thought it was either they're studying the wrong thing, studying the wrong way, or they're not studying. And so this year we spent a lot of time working with a colleague to figure out what it was, and she has worked with ESL educators before. And so we have just revamped our MTEL prep support. We as a district provide MTEL prep support. And we're seeing some crazy, interesting, nerve-wracking, amazing things, but we're seeing evidence that what we've redesigned is working, and in particular, some of our hardest tests, the CSL is pretty amazing, and these 9 women have taken the tests 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And for them to have taken our MTEL prep and be able to pass it at that rate, it just made us aware that as a district, our investment is how do we grow this without losing the quality of the content. But this has been probably one of our most major investments that we've seen a great yield for. The last bit of my slides, I'm just going to talk a little about retention. So I've been in district this is my 3rd time back in Boston Public Schools, and every time I remember and I'd always worked in central office, and I remember being the sense of isolation. There's very few people, depending on where you are, and I work like a crazy person, so unless you're in my floor, I never see you. But I know about teachers, and that sense of isolation for many people is what makes them decide that this stuff is crazy, and I gotta leave, or there's something better over there. Now, I know we're sitting in a district where the most diversity that you will find is in Boston. So when you leave, it'll be a very different an experience. So 3 years ago, I started this BPS Alana Educators Program. And it was a once-a-month gathering that we pulled together, and we censored from district, we funded it, and it was organized by teachers. And it was simply a gathering to build community all around different parts of Boston. And they would come together, talk about the work that they're doing, but the most important agenda was that there was no agenda. And it was intended to build community and to network. And what evolved after the first, let me see if I want to get it. Okay, so I'm going to go back. So what I noticed, and these aren't all the pictures, but the first couple years, first couple months, there were a lot of guys in this that came to these events. I now think it was because all the women were there. But when I talked with them, we wanted to figure out, like, what was it about? Why did you come and what were you looking for? And so we started doing different things in our district. We always, and well, this is our fourth year going, and we have held monthly gatherings in Boston. a lot of gatherings all over the city every month, and we've been consistent about that, and that's real important. Then we started this program, the Male Educators of Color Executive Coaching Program. And it was intentionally for the men who, and so we have 2 cohorts, but it was 25 men from all over the district. And the focus was not about leadership, meaning it wasn't, let me refrain, it wasn't about getting a job, and it wasn't about becoming a principal. It was about their own professional, personal, and career development. And they were coached by retired males of color from our district. And what you then had is a group of now about 49 men that are part of a network from all over our district that have ascended into different roles by virtue of their own development, but also are networked across our city. And our retention rates for this program, we started with, I guess I can show you them now. This is our first class. Colin Rose, who's our assistant super opportunity achievement gap, was a NEOC member. We've had men who are presenting at conferences, but more importantly, we've had men who see that their role or their opportunity within our district is their opportunities, and also there's a network. We've done a similar thing for women, and we have our second cohort finishing up their semester this year. The purpose of this is that it's really clear it's for women educators of color. And I have to say I've been really fortunate in a district where my first title was Director of Diversity Programs. And that allowed me to be very explicit about programming for women of color, men of color. That Alana program was called Educators of Color, and I was schooled by a Latina who said, oh, that means it's for Black people, right? And I said, oh, because only in Boston. So Boston Educators of Color, I guess, has a connotation. I didn't know this, and I've been here forever. So we changed it to Alana to make sure we are explicit that we're looking for all educators of color across all racial ethnic groups. And that definitely has increased our membership, but more importantly, it speaks to sort of being responsive to our community. The thing I would say about this, and the reason this is valuable for us, is that we are connecting women with coaches, men with coaches, who are retired. And the reason that's of value is they don't work for us, and they love that. And they can be very intentional about what they think these men or these women should be doing next. And what's powerful about that is that because I believe that coaches have our best interests in mind and their development in mind, that we have these individuals that grow these leaders, that become some individuals that want to stay in BPS, but more importantly, attribute their development to something that we did in our district.
Do the coaches receive stipend?
Yeah, they receive a very small stipend. I say that because we couldn't afford them if they asked for their real thing. I'm leaving on this last slide because we've also done a master's program with that same intent. Something for folks in our district if they want to get their principal certification or their master's or CAGs. How do we develop an opportunity for you to do it within our district and connect it to BPS? And we have a really strong partnership in UMass Boston. That's our thing.
I thought of one thing that I wanted to add that we didn't put in the slides that I think has been really important is that 2 years ago, I stood up in front of our district leadership team, which is the 50 folks who are the key decision makers in the district, and I invited all of the white members of that team to be part of a monthly group to do our own work on our own racism. 9 people, that group's about half white, half people of color. 9 people have been meeting once a month for over 2 years now, and doing our own work. Learning about the history of racism, looking at how racism affects our work every day, supporting each other to take risks, on behalf of closing opportunity achievement gaps. So I think that's been another important part of what is happening. It's maybe a little less visible, and that's probably good. But I believe that white people need to be doing their own work, and it's at the very least we need to get out of the way of progress, and at best to be effective allies and champions. So I just wanted to mention that that's another thing that we've been doing. So questions, comments? Yeah.
What's the extent?
So I have a wondering, based on what we heard earlier this morning from Rides about academics being the A or the number one principle around equity. I just was curious as to, you said, I think in your opening, that you connect with every, give and accept curriculum. So how does the racial equity lens decision-making process impact on those academic and curriculum goals?
I'll do my best to answer it. There's an invisible third person here who is Colin Rose, who runs our Opportunity Achievement Gap office. But that's exactly what they're working on, is instructional equity, ensuring that our curriculum is culturally and linguistically sustaining. I'll give you an example of one of the really exciting projects that office is doing. For many years, I'm not sure how many, Sarah you might know, but Boston Public Schools has had something called Advanced Work, which is essentially a gifted child program that starts in 3rd grade. And you can guess the racial makeup of the children who have historically landed in advanced work. It was determined based on one standardized test given in 3rd grade for, I should have said earlier, it's a 4th grade program. So a 3rd grade test, 4th grade entry into advanced work. And you would literally see schools in Boston where it starts off as 2 strands, then starting in 4th grade, it's 3 strands with an advanced work strand, and you watch all the white and Asian kids march off to the smart kids class, and everybody else is in the other classes, right? So we are in the process of phasing out advanced work and replacing it with something called excellence for all. And it brings tears to my eyes because it's so profound, because what we were doing before was siphoning off these kids and saying, you're the smart ones, okay? And then we were giving them extra resources. Think about that for a minute. So then these kids get Mandarin, and these kids get field trips, and these kids get the quote-unquote best teacher in the school, okay? So we're replacing it slowly but surely with excellence for all, where we're redistributing the resources, we're eliminating the tracking. So these are the kinds of things that Opportunity Achievement Office is making happen. So like we have a full-time person in the district that what she's doing is orchestrating that transition to excellence for all. We have the 10 Boys Initiative and the 10 Girls Initiative around, again, increasing supports for our children of color who have the highest concentration.
Well, what about the core academic work that all teachers do, teachers of color? How do you influence, that? What happens every day in the classroom?
Yeah.
That not only has to do with the books, but that has to do with cultural, integration, but has to do with core of rigor for all kids that allows them to achieve.
Yeah.
How does racial application apply
so
there?
There's a lot of good work happening. I'm not on the front row of that. I don't know if you feel like you can
all I
speak
did
to
was I
it.
went online and pulled this up. I think this will help you understand. This is our a framework that Colin's work, Office of Achievement Gap. This framework around open linguistic sustainable practices is something that's happening and being implemented at all levels of the organization, and our academics team, which is also, if it's academics, includes also our social work. This is a framework in which they're looking at all their work. I think that it would be difficult to do the work that we're doing without having it be multi-pronged approach. It would be hard to force an understanding without a definition. And so when we talk about cultural proficiency, we give a framework about what we mean, and we acknowledge a movement from awareness to proficiency. So we acknowledge that people are on a growth spectrum, but the expectation is they're moving from left to right.
I I would add just two quick examples. One is we've literally replaced every map and globe in the district with one that's more accurate. Doesn't reflect a Eurocentric perspective. My daughter came home from school last year saying, "Mommy, I have some homework for Columbus Day," and I kind of braced myself. "Oh, what is that?" And she says, "I have to write 3 reasons why maybe we should abandon Columbus Day as a holiday." Oh, okay, I can get behind that assignment. So I'm seeing this as a parent, how it's infiltrating a different way of looking at
There's
things.
someone in the back that had a question.
Yes, the work that you talked about that you're doing with the group of people that's been reading for the last 2 years, you're saying that when the Black people do their work, what's the extension of that? Does it extend beyond those 4 walls of you guys meeting?
You're talking about
She's talking about the white people.
So the group that you said that you guys meet.
The white people, right?
Are they all white people?
This is specifically a group for white people.
So yes, so what is the extension to the district or the public schools with respect to the work that you guys are doing? Or is it just a select group of people? Or is it leaders of the district?
Yeah, so this is all white people or members of the district leadership team.
Oh.
So they're in decision-making roles.
Okay.
You know, they're the head of budget, they're academic superintendents, they're, And so, what we're trying to do in that group is to take responsibility for our own work to educate ourselves about racism and support each other to take risks, to, even if we might make mistakes sometimes, and go back at it and bold allies, and yes, operationalize what we're learning and what we're doing every day.
I had a follow-up actually to the question that led to your anecdote about Columbus Day. Are you getting pushback from white families in the district, or are there just not enough of them for it to matter anymore?
Sometimes, I mean, for example, the project to replace advanced work.
I would imagine that would be the one.
Oh, you know, there are jokes about the such and such school will be the last school to have advanced work because those white parents are gonna march to City Hall if we try to take away, you know. And part of the reason is these white parents see advanced work as a ticket to an exam school, which in turn is a ticket to Harvard. You know, with the exam school, you know, the top exam school sends 26 kids a year to Harvard, okay? So, yeah, there's pushback.
But it's an interesting thing, okay, so the opportunity index is talking about equity, right? And equity doesn't mean equal. So it's a very compelling, you guys should walk, if you get a chance, and you know, I have nothing else to do, just check out the school committee. Take a random school committee, take a look, we're all televised. I think the conversation around equity really forces people to name what it is they don't want to give away, right? So it becomes really clear that you don't want it for you want, and that's why it becomes, so your advocacy changes. Before it was more like it's because of the school. No, you're still getting it at the school, you're just not getting it. And that makes it difficult. I know that you had a question in a moment ago.
Comment and question is one of the things that I was watching last week, one of the things we've done is to take the gifted and talented and admit kids, everybody takes the test, admit kids where teachers don't know school. And guess what? Everybody at the end, that's what. And so that idea is catching on.